Rich Dad, Poor Dad says America is doomed. Papa, what gives? This is Around the Blockchain. Thank you for joining, everybody. Make sure you hit that like button. We have some great guests. We're going to get right into it. On the top left, you see his name there is Crypto Lifer, also known as Sam Price. And if you saw his last trade, you would say, dang, that's nice. He did so well, he must have planned twice. Crypto Lifer, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much, man. God bless you. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Appreciate the whole team at the Bit Squad.
Love it, love it. And then also we have Aldo. Aldo also hails from Connecticut, and he'll help you connect those dots to collect that pot. Aldo, are you in a good trade right now?
Yeah, no, some swing shorts that I'm really happy with. Trying to gamble with a little scalp long right now. We'll see if it works. But, it's all a game of probability. It's get rich slow, not get rich overnight like some people think.
Slow and steady wins the race. Someone sneezed somewhere. I don't know what that was. Also on today, first-time guest, we have Eleanor Terrett. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, you did. Good job.
All right, Fox News business analyst. And some say there's some openings coming up, and we're rooting for you, Eleanor. Also on today's episode, we have William Laurent. You're going to have to check him out. He has something very exciting he's working on. It is called Proof of Green. And William, we're not talking about the holiday from 4 days ago, correct?
That's right, man. Sustainability is where it's at. You got to be green to be on the scene. Great to be here. It's always wonderful to be somewhere where I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Hey, green to be on the scene. And that lyric was quite clean. William, always a great time. Hey, let's get right into it. We have crypto spring. Is the winter finally starting to thaw out? Is the Game of Thrones about to begin? British multinational bank. We had a pretty large bank, and they released a fairly bullish report. This is Standard Chartered analyst Jeff Kendrick, and he was saying that Bitcoin's price by the end of 2024, hope you're sitting down, $100,000. This isn't a YouTuber like me saying, guys, $250,000, $100K. No, this is a major bank with a serious analyst, and they gave out this newsletter to all their investors and saying as we move to a decentralized, trustless, and scarce digital asset is going to just be so valued as all these banks start to fail, and as we have possible hyperinflation happening with the world's with the world's reserve currency, and even with Circle and other stablecoins depegging, they're giving that 100K moon math target. Now, Lifer, I don't want to, ask you whether or not I know you think we'll hit 100K eventually, but I want to ask you, what is your end of 2024 price target? Have you thought about a price target? And is the 100K, is that moon math, or is that a possibility?
Well, it's funny. I love how they do this. Thank you so much for having me on. I love how they do this because they don't mention the halving really, right? So it's like they want people to think they're super smart, which they are. I mean, good idea. They have analysts, but we all know we're waiting for this halving, right? And the halving I thought was May, but it looks like it's going to be pushed into March. So we're less than a year away from Bitcoin's halving. And, the block reward's going to cut in half. One thing about this halving that's big is, think about it. The last halving the last halving was it was 100 and 1,000, about 1,200 Bitcoins per block, right? Now it's 625. Then it's going to go to 625 a day, they think, but like 625 per block. And then it's going to go to 3 per block. 2 more, the next bigger halving, you're going to go all the way down to 1 Bitcoin per block by 2028, right? So, and then 2032. So the whole point is these halvings get more and more scarce, and more people know about Bitcoin. So as Bitcoin gets more and more popular and more people know about it, the halving it creates more FOMO. And that game of musical chairs gets tighter and tighter to see who can get on that Bitcoin seat. It's not going to be so easy to just grab up some sats as it was every time this halving comes in. I'm scooping up more and more Bitcoin, thinking way, way down the road, when I'd rather have 1 Bitcoin and not need it than, need a Bitcoin and not have one. I always say that all the time. So I believe this is very likely. My prediction for Bitcoin, somewhere into the $120,000 to $150,000 region. Also, it could get pushed up a little more. As we always know, there's a very hype around the cycle, and we could get a just overvalued price action due to that FOMO. But again, we'll come back down, 80% correction. I'm still sitting with the 4-year cycle. It hasn't changed. I'm going to keep kicking with it. So yeah, I believe they're somewhat spot on there, and they're putting in some of the halving math as well. So that's how you can kind of tell where we're probably likely going to go.
I too will keep kicking out. I like your analogy with the musical chairs. I think, every halving cycle, we get more and more entrants as the music just keeps playing. I know, the seats are starting to shrink, but guess what? I'm gonna keep dancing. I'm gonna keep dancing, keep that music playing. Give me some of those SBF amphetamines because I want to dance till my feet have blisters, everybody. Evan, you do a little TA as well. I was kind of wanting to pick your ear on some of your price targets 2024. Sam, he did bring up a good point with the halving. We see, usually a little bit of a pump until maybe a month or two before halving, then a little bit of a dip. Then, shortly after that, 6 months, a year, then it's kind of off to the races. With the halving schedule, I mean, can 2024 be the big bullish year, or with the halving, is it kind of destined to be 2025?
So the first thing I want to say about like these analytics, I remember reading an article. I think it was Citibank, their analyst saying Bitcoin would hit 300K in 2021. That's one of the biggest things where everybody was saying those big, big numbers in 2021. Obviously, we didn't hit that, so these predictions don't mean that much. Also, these are some pretty good indications that you may be headed for it.
The halving, is it kind of destined to be 2025?
So the first thing I want to say about like these analytics, I remember reading an article. I think it was Citi.
So can you hear
their analysts?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, we're good now. I'm hearing like myself. Let me so basically the thing, so that doesn't mean that's too much. I think let me show you my charts right now. This is my main kind of perspective that what we might see. So I'm looking back at this area, split RSI is starting to come down. Look at this trajectory. This line is that same trajectory considerably downward. Also, if you look at what's happening here, this is where we get into the end of 2024. I think you could get up to potential new all-time highs or close to it, but I don't think you're going to get to that 100K area until sometime in 2025. And I think that's going to be kind of your top. Either one of these places, around kind of 90 potentially, or 120, 130. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe we get up to 180. That's a little bit too optimistic, I think. And if you look at what happened last time, I mean, look at the end of 2020. You were just at the all-time high, so you didn't quite make it. I think it could be kind of similar to that. If we repeat this area, we go into a recession, things could get relatively rough here. So keep that in mind. CNBC front page, Bitcoin going to 100K, that's where things get a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit dicey.
All right. And Evan, great stuff. There was so much info. I thought I was hearing double, but no, that's just because it's so dense. It's so packed with info. So Evan, always a great job there. Eleanor, those aren't the only catalysts. We do have the halving. We do have this, banking failure crisis, but we also have the Fed potentially going to slow down on their monetary tightening. We might see a little monetary easing. Are you agreeing with that assessment? Do you think that they're going to be forced to stop some of these interest rate hikes as we just see more and more banks start to fail and more scary metrics, whether it's used car, home inventory, construction costs? What is your kind of macro thesis for the next 12, 24 months?
I think we're going to see a couple more rate hikes. I do think that, maybe two. We had Larry Fink on with Liz Clayman on the Clayman Countdown on Fox Business last week, and he said he could see anywhere between 2 and 3 in the next, year or so. So with that said, I do think, that's probably the limit, 2 or 3. I think you can go much further than that because, there's one thing about bringing down inflation, right? But then there's another thing about seeing what happened to the banks back in March. And it's interesting. I think that we have all these predictions, right? We see all these analysts come out and say, I think Bitcoin's going to 1 million. I think Balaji said that a few weeks ago. Everybody got excited. And then we had, so I remember this was kind of when I was right new to crypto. So fall of 2021, Bitcoin maxis were convinced that Bitcoin was going to go to 100K before Christmas. And, these things didn't happen. But then we saw, 2022, the crypto winter, we saw that, crazy price fall. Coming back a little bit now, I think we're just under 30K. I don't think it's impossible that the price of Bitcoin could reach at least approaching 100K in 2025. And the reason I say that is because Bitcoin, from a regulatory standpoint, has been given sort of the blessing, right, from the hardest, toughest regulatory body in the world. That seems to be the Gary Gensler-led SEC. He's the one who's saying Bitcoin, if any, out of all of them, I will comment that Bitcoin is most likely a commodity. So if you're kind of on board with the thesis that if it goes to the CFTC, they might be a little bit more lenient with their regulation. They might kind of let it, grow as opposed to clamping down on something that might be a security. You've kind of got that room for growth, right? And I think people are seeing that, and they're seeing, okay, well, Bitcoin seems to be the one that's getting the blessing, and we also saw what happened with the banks. So people kind of, that rush to quality, right? That flight to quality. So people say like, oh, should I invest in an altcoin? I mean, Bitcoin seems, like the one everyone's talking about, the one that's been around the longest, the one that Gary Gensler says is probably a commodity. So I think a lot of that has like factors in as well. You've got the technical side of things, which I'm not super crazy good at, as opposed to you gentlemen, but with the regulatory stuff, I think that plays into the whole Bitcoin going, to at least close to 100K within the next couple of years.
I'm glad you brought up Gensler's comment. He said, it's probably a commodity. We can't expect too much of a favorable view of crypto. So when Gensler comes out and says, probably a commodity, I think that's about as big a W as we could take. You did say it's the hardest, toughest body out there. I would give that to mid-80s Ultimate Warrior. William Laurent, I wanted to bring up, we're also bringing up analysts, and she reminded me, I didn't really say, hey, 100K last year, but I remember thinking very, very possible at the tail end of October, in the early part of November, talking about plan B. Oh my God, July matched up, August matched up, September. Next thing you know, you're like, well, he said 60 in October. We're right there. He said 80, 90. No. There's also analysts saying, $320,000 Bitcoin, early 21. So what are your thoughts about just analysts in general? You hear a big bank analyst say 100K Bitcoin. Is this a bullish narrative? Should we give this zero validity? Or counterpoint, should we counter trade it and say, you know what, if they're saying 100, now I'm thinking lower?
It depends if the analyst's name is Jim Cramer or not. No,
okay, well.
In all seriousness, I'm going to give you my bearish point of view. I think that we're going to start to see a nice little Fibonacci retracement on Bitcoin, and we're going to go down to 22,000 as the recession starts to kick in, as we starts to dawn on us that, hey, things are not really going very well here, at least in the States and Europe. I'm going to draw a parallel to crypto spring and the Arab Spring, because I don't think there's any crypto spring. Now, if you remember the Arab Spring, we saw that take root in Egypt in 2010. The Arab Spring was met with, brutal repression, violence, and that further fueled mistrust, right, and made that regime change very difficult at the time. It seems to me like Gensler and his allies in his regime are sharpening their anti-crypto knives, and we're going to start to feel their blades of repression digging deep into our guts soon. I might change my mind once I get a little bit more clarity on where we're going with regulation. If we're going to see Crypto Mom Hester come in and take over from Gary, but I'm not really sure right now where we are with regulation. Markets hate uncertainty. We have a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now. I'm not sure that we're in crypto spring at all, and I'm not one personally for danger when it comes to where I'm putting my hard-earned money. I want to play it safe, wait till the dust settles, till I see a little bit more clarity. Before I was like consumed by FOMO. Like I was about to go to the therapist because I was afraid to miss out on FOMO, right? So for me now, JOMO is the new FOMO. Like the joy of missing out has completely overtaken FOMO for me. So I'm saying 20. I'll see you at 22,000 Bitcoin.
All right, so we're not fully thawed yet. You're saying there could be a few White Walkers lurking in the distance. All right, I tend to agree with that assessment. I don't think we've slayed them all just yet.
At least two more rate hikes, as Eleanor was saying, in which I even at the end of last year, I was saying that we would be exactly where we are with rate hikes.
All right, good stuff there. All right, well, let's move on and talk about the SEC. We keep bringing up Gary Gensler. He just, some are saying, eviscerated on Capitol Hill as lawmakers continue to press him about, whether or not you regulating via enforcement. Are you giving people clarity? Are you trying to be a good actor in this space or a bad actor? Brian Armstrong also had some strong thoughts on it. We're going to share a video. I want to share a quote from McHenry first, and then we're going to play one from Donald's Press, I believe. Is Ether a commodity or a security? And then refused to answer, could not give a straight face answer. But let's just play. This is about 60 seconds here.
Something else. You said earlier in another line of questioning that the players in the digital asset space don't have a choice, that they have to comply with the rules. But once again, Congress has never given you a framework for regulating digital assets. Where are you pulling that one from?
With all respect, sir, we disagree on this.
Oh, I can see we disagree a lot, Chairman, because we're not giving you authority. You're just taking it. I think that's part of the issue right now.
With all respect, Congress painted with a broad brush when they set up the SEC, and I quote Thurgood Marshall, which is one of the greatest.
Congress paid it with a broad brush in 1933 and 1934, not in 2023. We've not touched that. It's a new industry. One last quick question. I think it might have came up. You were Hillary Clinton's CFO in the campaign, right?
It's part of my history.
Were you? Yes or no?
In 2016.
Did you facilitate the payment for the Steele dossier since you were CFO of the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Sir.
Yes or no?
Sir,
yes or no?
That was not.
You're under oath, Chairman Gensler. Yes or
I
no?
know. It was not something I was aware of.
Wow. Okay. Actually, I didn't even know it was going to take that right turn there at the very end. Crypto
Wow,
Lifer,
yeah.
I know you have a lot of thoughts when you saw that clip. He's getting taken down. They're bringing up some good points. These are, hey, it was a broad stroke, but it was a broad stroke 100 years ago. Is he ahead of his skis, or is this, hey, he's just trying to work with, antiquated script here? It's 90 years old. That's an old white paper.
This is the problem, is that we have people that are basically unelected officials telling us what to do. The people in that room were elected by their constituents, right? They're people that, they said, hey, this is how we want to live. This is what we think. And like you said, Congress lays down the framework. That's why we have three branches of government, right? So you can't have one with complete oversight, right? And because of that, we need to, and that's why I like the new idea that came up with Tom Emmer. He said, we need to have a board. The person at the head has to listen to the board. It can't just be one person that can get like a wink, wink and a pull in the back room and then start doing whatever they want. He's destroying the hearts of young men and women that want to grow in the crypto industry. He's also creating a lot of fake, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt among people that want to innovate and grow. I tell you, I'm on this channel. I always talk about innovation, progression, putting your best foot forward. When you're passionate about something, you become the best at it, right? And when you take people's passion away because you scare them, it's not good for any single organization or company or government or country. America's always been at the forefront of technology, the forefront of innovation. Don't take that away from us. Take him away from us. End of story.
Good stuff there. Real quick follow-up, Lifer. What's the shelf life of Gensler's regime here?
You know what the shelf life is? He's out of here by the time we get to $194,000 Bitcoin. No, he's gone. He's gone, man. He's gone, man. I just think he's gone by June. I don't see him lasting past June, man.
Bold proclamation there. All right, I would love to see it. I remember we were all like, oh, he taught a course on blockchain, cryptocurrency. This guy must be smart. He's going to help us. And then, fast forward 2 years or so, and been quite a different tale there. Evan,
one thing I want to say, he called ETH a security. He said ETH wasn't a security. I have the video. I posted it on Twitter today. Why is he teaching class? And I love the question when he said, so you taught a class on it. Do you own a wallet? Have you ever sent anything? And he's like, no. He's like, oh, so you taught a class on it, but you never transacted? I thought that was really weird.
You know what? Let's follow up on that. Evan, I remember that quote. You say he'd never used cryptocurrencies. He's teaching very high level Ivy League graduate courses on cryptocurrency. You had never used it. What, after seeing that last clip, I mean, do you take that at face value? What are your thoughts on that? Just unpack it. Do you believe it? Is it right? I mean, should he be out before June?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you should, but it's kind of too good to be true. I mean, what we have to do with this information is kind of just see it for what it is and try to see it through, a sector that's probably going to get much more regulated within the next 6 to 12 months. You already have Bybit requiring KYC starting May 8th. Things are happening. And what I like to do is see the fundamentals through the eyes of kind of the charts. And a lot of people, including myself, have been talking about for a while here is ETH potentially bleeding quite a bit against Bitcoin and a lot of the alts bleeding against Bitcoin. And we could look at this ETH chart on the weekly, look at your EMAs all turning gray here. I mean, that's a pretty bearish sign. And if we go back to kind of what history has shown throughout this area back in, we're kind of in 2023 is kind of like 2019 in terms of the year. We're kind of still in this area. And it seems like money flow could kind of come deeper here in the ETH Bitcoin evaluation. We could also see most likely Bitcoin dominance, which has looked very, very bullish, as I've been saying for a while, on the monthly, coming up with these momentum waves coming into the green, can come up higher and Bitcoin could outperform a lot of these altcoins. A lot of the reason I think will be based on regulatory FUD. And I think we're going to see, something like I was saying earlier, where a lot of the market corrects over, let's say the next 3 to 6 months and Bitcoin holds up better in a lot of these alts, bring us into a really good Bitcoin accumulation phase. But the last thing I want to show you real quick is we all know that the rumor is that ETH can do what Bitcoin did in the last bull run in 20x. The way that could potentially happen, look at where we are right now in terms of this momentum wave with money flow coming out, money flow crossing into the red here. We're not quite there yet, but what I'm going to be doing here is starting to DCA into ETH as soon as we confirm into the red and start converting some of my Bitcoin over to ETH. Hopefully, I'm hoping this is kind of worst case scenario. We come down to 600. How can you get your 15 or 20x? Maybe if we get up to 14, high numbers, 14, 10 or 14K in the next bull run sometime in 2025, assuming Bitcoin goes up to 100K or 120, where would ETH be? This is how you get some, big gains potentially. That's what I'm looking at.
All right. And I wish I would have listened to you with that Bitcoin dominance. I remember you calling it you called it the low 20s. You said, hey, guys, this is about to take a bunch of the volume here and or a lot of the air out of the room. And you sure as heck were right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to lead with one of my hair brothers here. We're going to quote him because it wasn't just Gensler speaking to people in D.C. We had Brian Armstrong, and I want to read his tweet. Spent the day in D.C. meeting with members of Congress. We need clarity in the U.S. for players in crypto for many reasons: protection, security, growth, etc. The SEC has caused untold harm to America with its policy, regulation, by enforcement. We will fight to fix that. Eleanor, there's a lot of people sad about their 8 p.m. Time slot, what they're going to get to watch. Let's throw them a piece of red meat here. Have we moved beyond they're bad for crypto? And are we stepping into the realm of SEC is actually hurting America?
If we're not there yet, then I think we're pretty close. I think that it's been 2 years of Gary Gensler kind of not having any concrete answer on anything, right? So, these crypto companies say, we come into the SEC or we try and call the SEC staff members and we try and get a meeting for our own benefit, for their own benefit, to see if we're operating in the correct way. And the frustrating thing is that the SEC, and it's not just Gary, it's been an SEC policy for, as long as the SEC's been around, that they just don't give guidance. So they're not going to tell you if you are breaking the law. They're not going to tell you which listed securities you may or may not have on your exchange. It's just the way that they operate. And we heard one of the congressmen ask Gary that in the testimony on Tuesday, which was, and it was to do with FTX, I believe. When did you let investors know that there was something wrong? And Gary said something along the lines of, well, we didn't. We filed the action, in December or January. FTX fell apart in November. People were hurt early on in November to the middle of November. So they, whether they were looking into it or not, we don't really know. I guess we'll find out soon. But yeah, this whole secrecy thing, I think that really has been hurting, especially companies, but also investors. And they say that their big mission is to protect investors, small and large, create, capital formation, and, just help the markets facilitate healthily. And I feel like, this is such a big sector of, American finance today. Crypto is going to be a large part of it. AI is going to be a large part of it as well. They're stifling that innovation for sure. And, you've got people like Hester Peirce on the commission who stands up and, says her piece, right? She gives her opinion, but at the end of the day, she's outnumbered. I mean, that's and going back to the point about, kind of redefining the role of the SEC chairman or the SEC commission. It's a political organization, right? It's a regulatory entity. I'm sorry. And there's 3 Democrats on the commission and 2 Republicans. So there's only so much that Hester can do. She can dissent and she can say, I disagree with my colleagues. But at the end of the day, that third vote, the chairman's vote, Gary Gensler votes Democrat. So I think there needs to be, this is a personal opinion. I think there needs to be less politics involved in regulation and more, bipartisanship and more inclusivity from industry leaders. So yeah, I think we're very close to answer your question the long way around. I think we're close to that. But you see these people like Coinbase, you see smaller trade organizations coming out, having meetings with lawmakers, going to Washington, reaching out to their users and saying, we'll help you reach out to your congressmen and your lawmakers to say, hey, this is, we want this technology to stay. We want it to stay around. And they're helping them do that. So I think they're on the right path. Whether it's going to do anything in the next couple of years until we get a change of administration in 2025, I don't know. But it's definitely hurting businesses. I mean, people are going overseas. They kept talking about that in the hearing as well.
Yeah, hopefully we get a regime change before January 25. It'll be a long, long time. We are big fans of Hester here as well. And one more thing. Yeah, I'm glad you said help facilitate. We are forgetting, everybody, viewers at home, Gary Gensler did help facilitate onboard crypto to the masses. It was just with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, if you remember all their private meetings. So he chose one person to help on board, and it was the biggest fraud in the entire space. Probably tells you everything you need to know about that situation. William, final question here. I have a strong feeling that you probably don't want the SEC to regulate crypto. But my question to you is, well, what should our next path be? Should we pass it over to the CFTC? They have seemed a lot more friendly. Or should we spin up a new organization? And what are your thoughts about doing something like that in today's politically charged climate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always been a proponent of the work that the CFTC has been doing to an extent. I'm also a big advocate of when something's not working, just blowing it up and starting it over, right? In business, you have to do that a lot of times, right? The thing is, I would say, Ralston Behrman's CFTC's shown a willingness to work with the crypto industry, right? They've been relatively open to engaging the industry, showing a willingness to work with with the participants in the industry and develop frameworks. I think they're probably more open to innovation at this point. They'll figure out a way to collaborate better, to develop regulations that are appropriate for this, new emerging asset class that is creating so much confusion. And again, to get back to some of the points we were making before, it's that fine line to walk between governance and innovation. Because if we stifle innovation, yes, it's all going away, probably to Dubai. So I think the CFTC is probably our best hope right now. It's going to be a hell of a power play to for that to actually happen and for them to supersede the SEC. But they've already done a lot of good work, I think, as far as recognizing crypto as commodities, right? And I think that's a good place for us. It's a good jumping point. It's a good place for us to go from.
Yeah, just put it next to oil and pork bellies. That's all we're asking for here. All right, let's talk a little hyperinflation and Robert Kiyosaki. That's right, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know I had that book as a teenager. I was talking to TJ. He was reading it in second grade, y'all. No, I think it was eighth grade. But I actually pulled up his Twitter. I didn't realize he was such a Bitcoin bull. Here he is posting on the 20. Why I heart Bitcoin. I watch it climb to 20K, then dropped to zero. I don't know where he was buying it for $0. Thought it was slowly finished. Bought in at 6K. He bought a lot. Also, strong feelings about Biden and RFK Jr. Kind of an entertaining Twitter feed, if I'm going to be entirely serious here. Bitcoin up over 100% in a year. Will it keep going up? I'm betting on it. I'm buying more gold, silver. Why buy more gold, silver, Bitcoin? Because Biden, Treasury, Fed are liars. And I'll end it with this. Bitcoin does not need Fed or government bailout because Bitcoin is people's money. Bitcoin to 100K. Long live Bitcoin. Well, he is saying the dollar is about to die. We're about to experience hyperinflation. This isn't a move by Guile from Street Fighter. No, we're going to just create more and more dollars as the BRIC nations continue to just continue their trade amongst themselves and potentially even attract new and more countries. Here's a quote from him. Yes, over 3 million followers, by the way. U.S. had to supply dollars to every central bank throughout the world, so we had to print probably quadrillions of dollars. And when that happens, the playground bully, the U.S. and the BRICS nations gang up against the bully. They say, take your dollars back. And when the dollars come roaring back into America, we have a thing called hyperinflation. Every time there's hyperinflation, guess what happens? Dictators arise. Eleanor, this is pretty alarmist. Are we going to see hyperinflation? I'm just some guy that knows Bitcoin's good. Should I be scared about the dollar becoming worthless?
I'm not so sure that will happen anytime soon. There was a question actually to Gary in the testimony, just to bring it back to what I remember from last Tuesday. One of the lawmakers said, should we be getting rid of the dollar as the global reserve? And Gary basically, gave his roundabout answer and said, no, everything we do at the SEC is to make sure the dollar stays super strong and the dominant currency. But, we did see unprecedented moves from the Fed in the last couple of years, right? Printing trillions of dollars. And, my boss, Charlie Gasparino, says this all the time. It was probably like the biggest failed money experiment, we've ever seen because, at the time it was recommended, but look what it's done. It's created this crazy inflationary environment. People can't afford eggs anymore. I go to the grocery store and I'm like, wow, like, I could, paying for eggs used to be a breeze. And now people, especially people who can't afford, it's sad. You're seeing stories of people that can't afford groceries and, gas prices. And it's all a result of this crazy money printing. Whether that's going to continue, I don't know. I think, we're seeing with kind of like the Bitcoin prices going up, people kind of being more crypto curious now that with the combination of the banks falling and the economy being kind of in the toilet, they're like, okay, well, this whole like self-custody thing, I like Kiyosaki said, right? He's like, it's the people's money. And I think there's something in that. I think people will kind of wake up to the fact that if there's a bank run, then I might not be able to get my money. And then where does that leave me? And if I'm self-custodying and if I'm, kind of I'm in the sort of the digital space, then maybe that's a better option for me long-term. I can't say whether that will happen anytime soon, but I do think that just these macro environment events we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years has had a real crazy impact on people's belief in the money system, frankly.
No, I think that's great general advice. Buy, stack a little Bitcoin, and most importantly, you just said it, self-custody. Self-custody is key. We've seen that all the centralized exchanges heading down or going down over the last 12 months. Well, William, I'm looking at this guy's Twitter banner here. Is he some Miami tech bro? Is he gonna show me some meme coin? Has he got some new free mint that I'm supposed to pick up? I'm a Zoomer. I get all my financial advice from TikTok. Should I be listening to this old boomer?
Let me vent a little bit here, because I think that Kiyosaki is one of the biggest charlatans in finance. He's made so many bad calls. I'm still waiting for that $50 silver call, right? Sitting on a pile of it, actually right here underneath me. Look, Rich Dad Poor Dad blurred the lines between fact and fiction. Most of it was embellishment. The rest was just common sense. It's a guy that got lucky, and this guy that made a fortune stating the obvious. So, like, look, we've known for a long time that dollar hegemony is going away. When, we don't know. It's happening a lot slower than we thought it would, because we can't underestimate the ability of the Americans, of the Europeans, of the Japanese, Kiyosaki excluded, to kick the can down the road, right? The whole world is broke. We know it. The US is never going to pay its debt. Europe is never going to pay its debt. There's 3 ways out: default, hyperinflation, and war. And none of those is good. So we are going to see hyperinflation. We've already seen it. I'm not sure that we're going to see famine and all those other things that Kiyosaki is predicting, especially because, we still have something that the rest of the world doesn't have in the US, and that's the strongest military. We can project hard power, right? So if you look at what happened to Saddam Hussein, right, is that he wanted to trade oil, not in petrodollars, but in Iraqi dinars. Well, that didn't turn out so well for him. Now, the inverse argument to that is, well, with this deglobalization that we're going through, that might come with demilitarization, that might come with de-dollarization, but still, at the end of the day, even though we are pulling back from being the world's policemen, we are projecting hard power that is backing up the dollar by proxy. I don't see that going away anytime soon. If you look at the 20-year cycle of the dollar, about 60% of the global reserves right now are in dollars. It used to be 67 like 20, 25 years ago. So it is going down, but we're not going to wake up tomorrow and we're all going to be starving and we're going to need wheelbarrows of cash to go buy, a gallon of milk.
All right, so not quite that bad. And good point about the world's police. Just look at what we did with Afghanistan. 20 years, trillions of dollars. We took it from the Taliban, and then 20 years later gave it back to the Taliban. Okay, checking my notes there. All right, Evan, Aldo, I want to ask you about the DXY. He's saying the dollar is going to crash. Your neighbor's going to break in and steal your eggs. They're going to steal your milk. They're going to steal your cat. Should we be worried about that? If you look at, the dollar's relative strength, if the dollar goes down, is everything going to go down? And because also DXY doesn't have Chinese yuan on there. There's a lot of currencies not on there. Russia currency has been pretty strong over the last 12 months. That's not on there. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, are you concerned about the dollar strength, and is there any real way to gauge that?
So yeah, on the Dixie, I'm thinking more of like a double bottom, what we're seeing right now, as you can see on my chart. I mean, the thing about like all those like doomsday predictions, like if you want to be real paranoid, you probably should either get a bunker somewhere or leave the country. I mean, it depends how paranoid you want to be, but let's be a little bit realistic here. If we look at the DXY, we're hitting a really significant place right now. We bounced to creating somewhat of a double bottom pattern off of 100 right here. You're also getting a bullish div that confirmed on the 2-day right here. Now, my trajectory, my longer kind of prediction has always been traditional markets to bottom somewhere around early to mid or late 2023 to mid 2024, and the DXY can continue forward up to around somewhere around 130 potentially. And it does look a little sketchy on like the weekly with the blood diamond. However, I do think you could get a bullish div out of this, and it may be somewhat of a continuation. It is a little concerning, and if we do, continue downward in this trajectory, which the weekly may tell you, that's where things could potentially get kind of ugly. You're talking hyperinflation. Bitcoin would probably continue to go up. S&P 500 would continue to go up. Gold and silver, all of those things would continue to go up. We obviously don't know which one in that case would do the best, but that's more like doomsday. And that's what I think would happen if the Fed, pivots next real quick or something. But it doesn't seem like they're going to. It seems like the Fed is going to kind of keep raising rates at least 2 or 3 more times, at least one more time, in kind of my opinion. And what I think is going to happen, even if the Fed, let's say, pauses in the next meeting, I don't think that will happen. But even if they do, I think with the economy slowing, unemployment rates going up, which does happen, every so often, we're way overdue for a recession. I think we will go into one. I think that'll kind of end a lot of the inflation. I also want to show you really quickly on a few of the commodity charts. Let's just look at cattle here. I know a lot of people have been bullish on cattle. This has been up so much, and I'm thinking kind of double top pattern from 2014 here, where we finally start to come back a little bit. I don't know if CryptoFace would agree with me on this, but I'm more in the ballpark hoping for some deflation, hoping everything kind of comes down. And I think that's kind of the best thing for the country and the best thing economically right now. You kind of want to root if you're in America, if you're not in some underground bunker with a tinfoil hat on, if you haven't fled the country, you're kind of rooting for that scenario. And I think that is highly likely. It's kind of everybody already talked about the bad news about the dollar. I think that's kind of already priced in with the dollar. And now it's more of a dead cat bounce for the next year or so. I think we will see it kind of fall apart, and some other currency will take over as world reserve, maybe Bitcoin, maybe the Chinese currency. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's hard to say. I think regardless, Bitcoin will do well with time. It will trend up with time. I think gold and silver will do well over the next 3 to 5 years. I think all three of those, Bitcoin, gold, silver, will outperform. Like Kiyosaki, I agree with some stuff he's saying. Obviously, he's wrong all the time, but who isn't? Some stuff he's saying is right, but I think ultimately the long game, gold, Bitcoin, silver will outperform the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones for the next 3 to 5 years. Will also very likely outperform the U.S. dollar for the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, and speaking of Kiyosaki, just pull up. He really does have a funny Twitter. It's 3 million on YouTube, 2.4 on Twitter. He said he is wrong a lot. Biden says bailout of SVB will not cost taxpayers anything. What is he smoking? I think it's just funny you have him out there, asking, what is Joe Biden smoking? That's pretty funny. Crypto Lifer, I want to talk to you about the possibility and the potential that our government is lying to us. I know this is going to sound crazy. Slow down. I think it might happen with inflation data. I think it might happen with CPI data. I think it also happens with the DXY. But I want to talk about what's not on the DXY. We don't weigh it against, I just have a list of countries I wrote down real quick. Brazil. We don't weigh it against Russia. We don't weigh it against China. We don't weigh it against Saudi Arabia or many of the Middle Eastern. So a lot of emerging markets, a lot of strengthening currencies, we're not measuring the dollar against that. Do you fear that they're going to continue to obfuscate how bad the dollar is doing, just like when they say inflation's only 6% when your eggs have tripled in price?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. This is one thing I want to talk about. I just did a great video on my channel, 7 minutes scripted, and we break down the dollar, the DXY. And while it's not only the dollar could drop and Bitcoin can drop, because you have to realize that the world could go into other reserve currencies at the same time. Everyone always balances Bitcoin against the dollar so much and acts like, but you have to remember there's other outlying influences on the DXY, and it's not just on and off risk assets, right? This is a video, but the other thing here is this, right? One thing I wanted to talk about is the pullback for Bitcoin, right? If the dollar, and I'm looking at the DXY here, the DXY is in trouble, in my humble opinion. That's a shoulder, that's a head, that's a right shoulder, man. And you're in a bear flag on the daily, tells me that you're going to drop 100. When you lose 100, that's going to be psychological for a lot of people. I do see somewhat of the double bottom that he's talking about also. But I just, the more and more BRICS gets together, the more and more they start circumventing wealth into other parts of the world and not using the dollar. Like the petro they're soon going to lose the petro. They're already doing deals in pawn. It's telling you that there's a problem. Also, go to Fiat Graveyard, a website called the Fiat Graveyard. No fiat currency lasted more than 300 years. I've studied this for like all of them. Like the florin went out the window, right? The continental dollar we printed to zero. There's a reason why we pegged it to gold. There's a reason why you have to have something. And everyone says, "Oh, but it's the war. You know, it's America's army and our strength." I'll be honest. I mean, that's another reason why you should pick Bitcoin. Why would you want to propagate a currency that gets propped up by violence and war machines? Bitcoin doesn't have to do that. Bitcoin can rule the world by itself through peace and love. And that's why I love Bitcoin. You know, and a little pullback for Bitcoin. Fine. We have a CME gap here, which is interesting to me. I'm looking at hit this, and that's my Sammy cup and handy. We could get a little pullback here, right? Fill that gap, hit the 618, and then I see this booming to the upside. Another thing, this coincides with July. That's when they're going to have to raise the debt ceiling. People don't realize when when Congress votes to raise that debt ceiling, they're going to have to print money. There's no other way. So that's almost a guarantee for me that we're going to get a surge in Bitcoin coming into that September, October, and November area, and then flood into the halving. So you have a lot of things coming that are really, in my mind, are going to force Bitcoin to the upside. You're going to have other currencies. Russia could also start using it as its reserve currency. There's just so many more options for the Bitcoin than there is for the dollar. So to me, I believe they're definitely lying for sure. And there's a guarantee that, you know, in my mind, this 100K Bitcoin is just, it's like when you take styrofoam and you push it underwater, it's coming up, baby. It's coming up. It's only a matter of time.
All right. We love those patented Sammy cup and handies, but that is all we had time for. It was a very close episode. And Eleanor, whoever has the most points at the end gets about 10, 20 seconds to just leave us with some parting thoughts, promote whatever they want to promote. So Eleanor, you took it home with the MJ23. You're even matching the colors here. So Eleanor, feel free, take it away. Just leave us with some parting thoughts, please.
Parting thoughts. Well, let's just hope in the next few months we're at a better spot than we are now, both in the economy, in the markets, in the crypto world for sure. I think, you know, there's got to be some kind of go time for regulation. We've got to have our lawmakers sit up and pay attention. You know, it's not just about stable coins. It's not just about, you know, developing a CBDC. It's about helping the crypto industry survive. It's not about not pushing it overseas. It's about incorporating this technology into our culture in the US and into the, you know, the traditional finance markets with, you know, treating it like, you know, we would stock trading, or, you know, Gary Gensler seems to like his AI, and, you know, wouldn't it be nice if he liked crypto just as much as he thought, you know, AI was as, you know, promising. So that's my thought. I hope we'll see better days ahead, and that's it. Signing off from me. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And maybe Gensler is an AI robot. We don't know. And that's all we have for today. My name is DZ. Bitcoin, stay above 30K. Why must you tease me? Hit that like button. Until next time.